Welcome to the 12 Days of Edition Wars, a series in which we take a deep dive into the Dungeon Master's guides written for the previous editions of our favorite game. We aim to discuss what worked, what didn't work, what got pulled into future editions, and what got left by the side of the road. On the 6th day of Edition Wars, my true love gave to me 6 geese laying those sweet, sweet golden eggs that we exchange for XP. Oh no, wait. We're on 3rd edition now.
Right, if this were 1st edition, it would be the Egg of Coot.
It would be, yes. Or the Egg of the Phoenix. You know, right. You never know which one it is.
Yeah, it's deep cuts o'clock, folks. Deep cuts o'clock.
Yeah. So, 3rd edition. So, actually, full disclaimer here, I am using the 3.5 edition.
I am also using the 3.5 DMG. There's just not enough material difference between the 3.0 DMG and the 3.5 DMG to make any hay out of. I mean, we get into some nuance here, but that is a bit picky even for us.
Excellent. So, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So, I mean, the very first thing in the book really is a sidebar with a justification for this book existing. It's why a revision. The purpose of sidebars is the next sidebar. I love that. That's pretty meta. But.
Yeah, it totally is. You can imagine the person looking directly into the camera while they say it.
Right.
I'm doing an aside. Why an aside?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of an aside?
How do asides work in Shakespearean theater? Well, I'll tell you. In iambic pentameter.
We should do a whole episode in haiku.
The seasonal references are going to be the challenge there, I feel.
Probably, yes.
A lot of people think that it's just the meter, but no, you really need your seasonal reference. And I'm sticking with that.
All right, sounds good.
So,
well, wait, do you agree with the justification of the revision?
Oh, yeah. The fact of the matter is that 3.0 got some really, really intense field testing in its first 4 years of use. I mean, it was incredibly popular at the time, and it had seen good, robust play testing before release that didn't hold a candle to what came immediately after. And so the wheels were already coming off by 2003. It was, things like, look at all these dead levels in my poor ranger class, or, wow, haste sure is baller for everyone, and why do I have any other spells? Okay, it had to happen. And, from my perspective now, they should have gone farther with making more changes, but that's okay. They wanted to keep to the beating heart of 3.0 while making a bunch of fixes, and they did. And the revision is mostly very good stuff. I'd have to really, really refamiliarize myself with it to remember what it was that I didn't love, but I remember there were some things that left me a little cold at the time. In those heady days of 17 years ago. Oof.
It seems like it shouldn't be that long ago, right? On the other hand, 2020 is like 18 years long. So,
well, I mean, I just got out of college, right? Just recently I got out of college. Oh, it was 17 years ago in 2003.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I seem to have aged. What happened? Anyway.
Yeah. Don't ask me when I graduated high school.
Many of my friends are now scowling at their, phones or whatever they're listening to this podcast on, thinking, "You old, shut the up."
Yeah, exactly. So the point here is that the revision was needed, but in terms of the DMG itself, it's not such a huge set of changes that we need an episode for both. So we chose the 3.5 edition.
Right. In no small part because it was the easier one for me to pull off the shelf. But also it is the better of the two by some margin. I'm not going to say a large margin, but some margin.
I mean, I'm looking at it in PDF because I don't have a hard copy. It's the only edition that I don't have a hard copy in. And so if that tells you anything about how I feel about third edition, then you're reading between the lines because I didn't say it.
How diplomatic and yet unsubtle. So the thing about this DMG that really distinguishes it in the whole from first ed and second ed DMGs is that while there is, advice and persuasive writing here, that is not the main of the book in my recollection and in what I'm getting from skimming it right now. It is much more prescriptive and, defining procedures to follow. There's a lot of tables of things that you might or might not use in play, but a good random table is a handy tool to have in all kinds of different ways.
It's actually kind of hard to explain because it's impossible to say that first and second edition did not have a ton of minutia and tables and very specific pieces and bits of game that were expected, or maybe that's the wrong word, that were utilized. It's impossible to say that third edition has that and first and second didn't, or that, those third edition has it and, OE didn't, because OE had a ton of fiddly bits. It's just that they weren't all necessarily written in the rules. But it's hard to say that, but it is actually exactly what we mean, because the third edition shifted to such a minutia-based rule system in a different way from the way first and second edition were minutia-based, if that does that make sense?
And that was a very deliberate design choice.
Absolutely.
We may have talked about this before, but the thinking was that they needed to standardize the play experience so that it was much more consistent between any two tables that were running D&D, right? In first and second, no question, you could get just such an unrelatedly different experience due to optional rules, house rules, different ways of approaching sort of the flow of play and everything, that any two tables running 2E, like, you could very likely barely tell that they were both D&D. And they found that to be a problem, in part because of problematic players and problematic DMs.
Right.
Like, even now, there's a lot of discussion around sort of problem players and tyrannical DMs or whatever in online discussion, and a lot of that came from first and second ed, and they were trying to fix it by legislating everything. Right?
Well, let me put it this way. When every decision is up to DM fiat, that is, the DM chooses, that means that you're relying on the DM to make good decisions at all turns, or at every turn. And while that is an ideal and it sounds wonderful, it's not always the case in actual play. So in order to make it so that players were not subjected to DMs who didn't allow for, or let me put it like this, DMs who were inconsistent in their application of certain decisions or rules or rulings were problematic. And the style of DMing in a lot of games, in a lot of game groups, was very aggressive, arbitrary. So that style of play, that style where the DM is out to get the players, right? Or the DM doesn't take enough care with detail to be consistent with players, that's what they're trying to fix.
Sure.
and players who don't follow the rules, who try to create a character or use a kit in a way that's not intended.
Sure.
Those types of things, right? Like, so, back in first edition, there were not a ton of options for players unless you played a wizard, and then you're talking about spells. But second edition had all of the classes and then the kits. And so you had this sort of explosion of customizing abilities, right? Or customization ability. But it was sort of widespread and inconsistent in terms of power levels,
Yeah.
right? So you might have a DM who really enjoys certain classes but not others, or likes certain kits but not others, and plays with a very aggressive stance towards the players, right? Adversarial, that's the word I was looking for. If a DM is being very adversarial with the players, that's a different kind of game. And I think one of the reasons that they pushed toward this direction in third edition is because they wanted to take away the fiat part of the dungeon master's job, right? If we give you a rule for everything, then there's no inconsistency.
Yep.
Right. And so that DM, regardless of what character is being played or what behavior the player is performing or whatever, or how the DM actually feels, if they're playing by the rules, there is a rule for everything.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly the goal, sort of a rule for everything and everything in its place.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, my experience of it was that it did not in any way quell rules arguments. It instead meant that any rule I could not instantly remember and wanted to just get past was now an argument instead.
Right.
It was not a great experience for me over the many years of running 3.5.
I mean, and I'm not, so there's a conversation there to be had about the intention of a set of rules versus the real actual usage of of those rules at a table. And I mean, heck, fourth edition is a great example of this, where I think there was a lot of intention put into the design that was played very differently from the actual intention that the designers maybe wrote it with. Some of it was spot on, but I think some of it was not spot on. And I think third edition had that same problem, but for different reasons.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So the book does open with its most advice-heavy section, right? So chapter 1, running the game, starts off very advicey, about how to work with players, how to run a game session, how to handle metagame thinking. There's a fairly lengthy example of play that it ventures into the very improbable for things for players to actually say or do. Let's say I think you'd have a hard time selling this script as a radio play. That's what I'm going to say. And so it's just got a lot to say about being a GM, and
it talks about different styles of play.
Yeah.
So that you can have a sort of understanding of maybe look, if this is the first time a DM's reading this and that's the first section that they really read, that's a good thing, right? Because they might think, well, that sounds like the kind of game I would like to play, like that style. It's good to have thought about it at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they sort of, in style of play, they talk about their spectrum sort of being from kick in the door to deep immersion storytelling, and then other axes of variation, such as seriousness versus humor, that kind of thing. And I mean, certainly my experience of 3.5 was that it was so mechanics forward and so driven by a need to optimize just to survive and sort of stay competitive with the monsters that a lot of deep immersion storytelling got lost. that's much more sort of my speed, and is much harder sense to create at the table, because figuring out things like, well, how am I going to get the feats I need for the prestige class I want by the level I want it, so I'm not wasting levels. It's hard. It creates a lot of table talk, and that it was very tedious if it wasn't specifically the game you showed up to play. And so it wound up being the game people showed up to play. And, well, that's not really either kick in the door or deep immersion storytelling. It is a system mastery metagame that very much drove 3.0 and 3.5.
And so, just to be clear, that's not really my style. That's not my preferred style. Sounds like it's not your preferred style. But we're not knocking anybody who loved this. I mean, there were a lot of people who loved this game, and that's not, we're not here to yuck your yum. Okay, we're just saying that the rules actually lead to a specific type of expected play. So while this first chapter is nice, you have a hard time actually implementing what it says in it if you actually play by all the rules. Is that
right.
fair?
I agree with that. I mean, the way feats work and the kinds of feats that are available really drive that right out the gate with 3.0 and 3.5. And then the open gaming license and the absolute explosion of third-party content just turn the knob on that and break it off entirely.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because insofar as there was ever a steady hand at the tiller for game balance of all of third edition D&D, that hand had nothing at all to do with third-party products.
Right.
But again, that system mastery, the favor the game gave to system mastery was in no way an accident. It's in no way an accident. It's a way to create an emotional hook. You get better at the game, and you get more rewards. That's an emotional hook. And as you're saying, it's fine to enjoy that. An enormous number of people continue to enjoy it. 3.5 remains popular, both in its own right and in its later incarnation as Pathfinder First Edition. It's an incredibly popular game. It just isn't where my tastes have sort of developed to, and same for you, right?
Right. Well, that's not where my taste started. So,
Fair.
and because and also to be fair, because I never really played very much third edition. When third edition came out, I was still playing second edition. Actually, I was still playing first edition with some second edition things bolted on, but I was already I was moving more towards other games at that time. Not that I hadn't played other games before, but in terms of campaign play and long-term play, I was playing other stuff. And then I took about a 5 or 6 year break. So, actually, well, I guess a 4 to 5 year break. So then when I came back in, third edition had like 40 books, or third 3.5 had like 40 books, and there was no way I was touching that.
Yep.
So to be fair, for me, it's not because I read it and thought, oh, this isn't my game, I hate this, it sucks, or played it and said that. It's just that I never played it that much. I've played several sessions now,
Sure.
from between when it was released now, but several sessions is way different from how this was played. This was played weekly for hours, by multiple groups, thousands and thousands of groups across the country, across the world, maybe, right? So I'm not knocking on it. I'm just saying, for me, my tastes didn't sway that way in the first place, and because I never sort of made a transition as a group over to third edition and played third edition long term, I never got a taste for it. I definitely think that if you really loved first and second edition, third edition is an acquired taste. And some people end up acquiring it and some people don't.
Yep.
So having said that, chapter 1 actually it has a lot in here about game balance, whether or not you need to know all the rules, how to prep a game session, knowing your PCs, setting the stage for a session, pacing, maps and miniatures. I mean, there's a lot of good advice in here. I do agree that this is kind of the chapter that is really the, hey, you have no idea what's going on, but you want to play D&D. Here's an overview that gets really detailed in some spots about how this actually should work. And if you're the DM, here's your job.
Yep. And I tell you what, I had completely forgotten how many rules variants there were going to be in this book. Good gracious, there are a lot of variant approaches in sidebars. Skills with different abilities, instant kills, automatic hits and misses, striking the cover instead of a missed target, sapient mounts, roll initiative each round. Just like that's many pages in a row, and they each have a variant rule sidebar at the bottom, which does sort of run against that standardization of experience kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does, but it's I agree, but it's allowing for, we know there are some things not in the PHB.
Yep.
So here they are, and here's some variants on them.
I think I'm ready to skip ahead just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move ahead.
So I think that one of the first really interesting things that we come to in Chapter 2 is Table 2.5, Difficulty Class Examples. It's on my page 31. And so it is a table of difficulty classes running from -10 to 43 for different kinds of skill checks. And so it has an example of the action.
For example, walking a tightrope.
Walking a tightrope, tying a firm knot, tracking a goblin that passed over hard rocks a week ago and it snowed yesterday. And then it tells you the key ability and skill that you roll there. So that might be heal with wisdom, diplomacy with charisma, survival with wisdom, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Or save. Sometimes it's a save.
Oh, or save. And then who could do it? Who could possibly achieve that DC? And some of the use cases here are intended to be fairly extreme. Hear the sounds of a pitched battle is a listen ability check. Who could do it is a commoner on the other side of a stone wall.
Right.
Well, all right.
So to be clear, it actually defines what it means by who could do it. It says this is an example of a character that would have about a 50% chance to succeed at this action.
Right, okay.
And so when it names something by class, it assumes that the character of that class has the skill that is being called for.
Right.
And so other characters could also attempt it and either succeed or fail and have a better or worse chance. It's not sure, but this is trying to give you the 50% mark.
Right. And that thing about on the other side of a stone wall that I just mentioned, well, the change in listen difficulty that you're going to get from being on the other side of a stone wall is going to get spelled out later in the rules in some massive table of modifiers to listen difficulties somewhere. I'm not going to go find it, but just take my word for it that it's in here somewhere, because that level of DCs need to be calculated, down to quite detailed values is very much the sense of the book here.
Right. And so there's another example having to do with hearing. It says hearing people talk on the other side of the door, and who could do it? An absent-minded sage being distracted by allies. Right. And so once again, here's the situation where you're going to get modifiers for that. Like that whole absent-minded thing, that's not an accident that they wrote that.
I mean,
right?
I don't know that absent-minded shows up as an actual value
No,
until you get to
but
Unearthed Arcana 3.5, but
right, but you get what I'm saying, though,
No, I
right?
do.
Like it, but they're trying to really set a statement about the types of. So here's what's interesting about this table. I actually like this table, but what's funny about it is they're trying to give you a kind of baseline for, how to figure out, what kind of DC to set for a certain type of activity. And I appreciate that. This is definitely information that the DM needs, right? Especially if they're new and they don't really know how to just, after you've been running a game system for a while, you kind of get an idea of, well, here's about what a DC 10 is. And,
Sure.
and you can then adjudicate on the fly. You don't need to look up something on a table every time. But for a new person, and for somebody who's coming from first or second edition and never played third edition, or they're coming from third edition or whatever, they're a new DM though, they only ever played, this is invaluable information. But what's really funny about it is exactly what you're bringing up, that here's this table, it's invaluable information, and now the rest of the book is going to spend all of its time and energy showing you how to modify this stuff. And also what's really funny is too, like, if you don't really know how to read this table, it can be confusing. For example, if you look at the about 1/4 of the way from the bottom of the table, there's a DC 25. Find out from a city's inhabitants who the power behind the throne is. Okay, that's a charisma gather information check, right? And a high level bard can do it. Okay, if it's a DC 25. So is there wiggle room there? Like, what's high level? What if you're in a city and everybody suspects who the power behind the throne is, right? Like, everybody knows that Wormtongue has, everybody suspects Wormtongue has, dirtied the mind of the king.
Well, I mean, he was a man of Rohan once. He doesn't have to be Saruman's slave.
Right. You get the idea, though, right? So players, if your DM introduces the vizier to the king as Wormtongue, I think you know what to do.
Yeah, right.
So, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, so what's funny is that this table tries to be really instructive, but on some level, it's less than helpful. So anyway, we can move on from that. I don't want to get stuck on that table for too long, but I do actually like the table.
Right. I mean, we could do 20 minutes on bandying words with a witless worm, but that's much one feels.
That's right.
So the next interesting piece to me is adjudicating magic. And I appreciate some of the things they care to include here. Handling divinations is a classic among gaming problems. If there are divinations, if there are ways to gather information without putting in legwork and engaging in risk, then I bet people will do that. Or if there is risk and it's just risk that is easier to manage, or heal after the fact, then I bet people will do that. So it's really hard to like balance divinations, especially things like scry. And so this notes that problems include the player could learn too much, thus spoiling the mystery. This is your classic, well, there's a murderer in this town, and I'm going to use detect evil. I bet the murderer is the evil guy.
Mm-hmm.
Which, okay, we already did our, bit on alignments, but anyway, we don't have to do it again. I'm not actually trying to go into another treatise on alignment. Followed by needing answers on the fly, which things like, I scry this person at a totally random time of day. What are they doing? If you don't feel completely confident improvising an answer, well, maybe that gets awkward. And a lot of the time, if they are doing that, you actually do want them to happen to look in at just the right moment to learn the interesting thing, because having players spend their spells and learn something boring is not helping either. Right? The player did make a choice, and you'd like them to at least get something for their choice.
I also want to say that the advice in this little section is less than helpful. It basically says, it's difficult coming up with a way to convey information that is being conveyed with the divination spell, especially when it says something like that advice can be as simple as a short phrase or might take the form of a cryptic rhyme or omen. And then it says cryptic rhymes are often difficult to come up with in the middle of a game. Well, no duh. So what's the advice? Oh, one trick is to create a frickin' rhyme ahead of time. Well, thanks a lot.
Cool.
What if I didn't know my players were going to cast that?
Right. I mean, it's easy for my wife. She's a poet. For me, ooh.
Next time it happens in my game, I'm going to say, hold on, I got to make a phone call. Ring, ring, hello, rabbit.
That seems fair to me, actually. Yeah, she'd be
okay.
She would enjoy that.
All right, sounds good. Is that like phone a friend? Do I win $1 million? I'll share.
Well, you only get one per campaign, apparently.
Oh, well, darn.
Right.
Anyway, I'm laughing at this advice because it's so obvious, but also unhelpful.
Right.
Right. It's not really advice. It's just, duh, you should have planned better.
Right. It stops at, yep, that's a problem. Anyway, moving on. Thanks. Cool.
Yeah, excellent. Mm-hmm.
But next up is the guidance for creating new spells, and that's also pretty interesting stuff.
Very short section, though, I feel like, compared to what we see in things like the first and second edition.
Well, so in terms of guidance for creating a new spell, it's actually surprisingly similar in its format to the 5th Ed DMG. They just don't tell you what they mean by dice, what die size they're talking about. And, you have arcane spells that scale much more aggressively than divine spells, which just isn't a thing in 5th, right?
Right.
That's a distinction without any difference.
Right, but I mean in comparison to first and second edition.
Yeah, for sure. It's
right.
Well,
so
like the damage scaling advice, I don't recall that being a thing.
Even a thing, right? Yeah. But I just mean also the section. They were much more effusive with language and talking about the importance of creating new spells and research and all these things. And here it's kind of, it's very mechanical in essence. It's very much, okay, sometimes people want to create new spells, the DM or a player, here's some guidelines. Boom.
Well, and it's going to be relevant to later discussion, but this is the edition that really turns away from, you get to a midpoint in the campaign and now you start having a lot of downtime to work on personal projects.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
That's not how 3rd edition do. You're not building a castle unless you buy the Stronghold Builder's Guidebook to get some rules for that, which, I mean, you can do. It's not offering the same kind of thing, but it's an interesting experience in itself. And so without that expectation of downtime, and with a great increase in the number of spells known classes, then spell research and both to add new spells to your spellbook and to create new spells from whole cloth, that's going to be much less a part of play, right?
Right.
Because in this edition, sorcerers and bards are core classes, and moreover, bards now have spells known instead of functioning like wizards light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're sorcerers light, not wizards light. By the way, folks, feel free to go back to our Why Even Are Sorcerers episode for a refresher course on how that works.
Yes, please do. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, I'm set on that part. And it's going to lead us straight into rewards. And we've talked about this section a couple times now, both on the experience point side and on the treasure side. But the super, super short refresher course is that both XP and gold are filling up progress bars for you in this edition. And at various milestones of those progress bars, you get a cool thing. The cool thing is either a level or a better magic item. But buying magic items and enchanting magic items to make them better are both core parts of the 3.5 and 3035 experience.
And so while gold does not directly apply to experience points in this edition, it does directly allow you to purchase things to make your character substantially better.
Right. for sure.
In a very different way than first and second edition did so.
So next up is the experience point tables. I'm trying to go through this at a reasonable clip. The experience.
Oh,
point
I was
tables,
already skipping ahead to death.
Oh, sure.
I just don't have. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about the experience and all that.
We've covered all of it before, so that's fair enough. The one thing we say about experience tables is just remember, kids, all of your XP comes from killing monsters. Has never been the law of the land in D&D. All right, we're good.
Yeah, and you can tell that from this table.
Yes, well, that table is going to be exactly uninstructive in that fact, but
right.
the modifying XP awards and assigning ad hoc XP awards sections are going to be more indicative.
Right.
And story awards in the next page is much more helpful. Anyway.
Yeah. And there's to be fair, there's a variant sidebar talking about faster or slower experience gain.
Right. So character death. This gets into how Raise Dead costs you a level and a bunch of cash, but there's no system shock roll. There's no loss of con score unless you are level 1, I believe. Don't die at level 1; it's bad for you.
Yeah, because it's 2 points of con loss.
Is it 2? Lord.
I think so, yeah.
Oh.
If the character was first level, he or she loses 2 points of constitution instead of losing a level.
Gracious.
That's big, people.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious to say, hey, it'd be good if you survived a second level, but here we are.
And the thing is, like, this is also the first edition where rolling up a new character because you died at first level is not the quick part of the game that it used to be.
Right. I mean, by late second edition, especially thanks skills and powers, it wasn't quick anymore.
Yeah.
Because you were assigning all these skill points and other junk.
Sure. But
yeah.
Basic second edition, right? Like just PHB second edition was relatively quick. There were some nuances, but if you knew the system, it'd be very, very quick. But in third edition, no way. No way are you rolling up a character in 20 minutes during the break of that session because your character died.
Unless you already have incredibly high system mastery, no.
Yeah, and even if, right, there's still, it depends on which books the campaign is using, and if you have an idea or conception of what prestige class that you would like to go for.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so anyway.
And so this is guidance for bringing in new characters if a character dies and stays dead after first level. That's always good to have. Every game needs it. I wouldn't say that this is incredibly special advice.
I mean, it's hitting the bases. It's not. The thing is that this book in particular, because the system is so mechanized, a lot of it does just seem very obvious, specific advice, right? It doesn't seem like, oh, there's any fantastical or wonderful advice in here. It's just very workaday, like it's utilitarian. The advice is very utilitarian.
I would agree with that. So moving forward to chapter 3,
adventures.
Right at the gate, we're talking about adventure motivations and structures, and this is good advice to have. This is how do we even run this game kind of stuff, which you absolutely need. And a table of 100 adventure hooks never goes out of style, which is not to say that all of these are award-winning, but that's okay. A lot of them are very sort of tropey, you might say. Cultists are kidnapping potential sacrifices. You have told me nothing about that adventure.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah. People grow suspicious of half-orc merchants peddling gold dragon parts in the market. Okay.
Putting it mildly, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. On the other hand, you've got colossal vermin are straying out of the desert to attack settlements. And an innocent man about to be hanged pleads for someone to help him. Like, there's a hell of a hook. But it still doesn't tell you anything about why he's innocent or if you should help him or what the story is behind it. But I do like, this is the kind of thing that I really like. Also, this whole, the writing in this part, because it is system non-specific, it's widely applicable. It moves away from the mechanistic discussion type that we are talking about. The structure of an adventure can be applied to any game.
Well, right. I mean, everyone who contributed any words to this DMG had been playing at least in second edition. I guarantee. I mean, the book was designed by Monty Cook. Well, he weren't no spring chicken when he wrote the DMG. And the rest of the design team was included Jonathan Tweet, Skip Williams, additional design from Peter Adkison, Rich Baker, Andy Collins, David Noonan. Not spring chickens. They had learned a lot about best DMing practices. It's just that, in all seriousness, they've explained it in some very dry ways. But they're making good points about best practices here. Things like don't leave the PCs by the nose. PCs don't need to be spectators in the adventure. That would have been good advice for the Time of Troubles modules in second edition, which I will never stop dragging. Never. The Deus Ex Machina solution doesn't work in adventures. It only sort of works in Greek theater.
I will submit, if you have an adventure where there is a chorus that comes out occasionally to tell the audience what happened off stage, then I would be okay with the Deus Ex Machina.
Right, that's kind of amazing, actually. That would be really interesting.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool?
But you can't have a chorus come to your gaming table because of social distancing.
That's true, so please don't do that.
And then finally, preempting the character's abilities. That's a really tough one. That one paragraph is not enough nuance to discuss that. There's right times and places for things like you can't teleport inside this dungeon. Right. I'm sorry, your ability to teleport is turned off in here. You have to get to the one place in the dungeon where you can teleport. That is actually valid design. You don't want to be turning off like Misty Step. That's not actually great. I'm talking about, teleport, the spell. Turning that off so that PCs can't sort of blip to the end, yeah, that's fine. This is 3.5, so anything that turns off Find the Path is a good idea. Find the Path, otherwise known as Ruin the Adventure.
Dimension door in, rescue the kidnapped person, and dimension door out. Easy peasy.
Because of its limited range, I agree-ish with that. But also ways of foiling that are non-trivial.
Sure.
So it's fine. And there's an Adventure Writer's Checklist, and I appreciate that, though. I mean, I'd read a whole book of just good advice on adventure writing, and have. Sure. We get site-based adventures and event-based adventures, which is exactly the same idea as the keyed versus triggered encounters business from second ed DMG. Now we're going to get into encounter building. This is where it gets real mathy. It is real mathy, folks, with the encounter level, number of creatures, a mixed pair of things.
Right.
Like, there's a lot here to take in, and it really just kind of amounts to you need to look up what the table says and trust the table.
So if you're a DM who's listening to this and you've never looked at this table, and you do have the 5th edition DMG, and you turn to page 80, where it has a table that talks about how to determine how difficult or easy the encounter is that you just designed based on the experience points and the levels of the PCs. This is that, but not as easy to read. And not as easy to adjudicate and put together. And also, if you're a DM of 5th edition and you've used that table, you know that it's not exactly correct all the time.
Yeah, well...
And so my question was to you was going to be, is this one in 3rd edition correct?
Well, so the big question is, what does correct mean? Does it mean you correctly drain about a quarter of the party's resources per encounter? because maybe, but that's going to really make a big difference in where you sit in the arms race between optimizing your monsters with both their own abilities, like improving their feat selection, and then things like buying them cool magic items with their, encounter treasure budget. All of that is going to make a huge difference in how tough the encounter is. Like, what you don't see is a lot of, oh, we faced one monster that was many CRs higher than us, but because there was only one of them, we just wiped the floor with them, right? That's absolutely a thing in 5th ed. The reason it's not a thing in 3.5 is that their AC is going to scale out of reach, and the way iterative attacks work, like, you might be landing your first attack each round. Odds are against you landing your second attack in a round. For your third and later attacks, that's adorable. No. And so the game is doing that very intentionally. Well, it turns out that's really super mathy, and people kind of don't like it. And so 5th ed doesn't do that. But that means that, the 11th level fighter is probably hitting with all 3 attacks in a round. Or if he isn't, then he's still hitting with most of his attacks in a round. And that means that he's doing a lot better job burning down the bad guy, right?
So for me, it was more I meant it more as a rhetorical question.
Fair.
Because what I'm trying to say is, when you look at table 3.2 about encounter difficulty, it's trying to tell you how much of the total number of encounters that the PCs face, like what percentage of those are easy, what percentage of those are challenging, what percentage of those are more than challenging and very difficult, what percentage are completely overpowering.
Yeah.
And I guess my point with that is, it kind of gives you a look into how difficult this is to eyeball, because that's really tough to set up.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the published 3rd edition modules followed this, right? Or if this is one of those guidelines that we don't use, but we know people will ask for it when they're creating their own first adventures. And once again, rhetorical. So,
I couldn't give you any kind of useful answer on how much this was even used in adventure writing. I certainly didn't use it in my adventure creation, because it just calls for more combat encounters in a day than I can stomach running.
It definitely harkens back to that table we talked about in the last episode, in the 2nd edition, with the here's how many encounters you should have, in the morning, and but moving on from that, there is something nice on the very next page. It actually talks about difficulty factors and options that the DM has, making an encounter more or less difficult.
Yep.
And it talks about things, for example, tight quarters make things difficult for rogues.
Yep.
And encounters with evil outsiders are difficult without a paladin or cleric.
I love how they don't even get into the fact that encounters with undead may be harder without a cleric, but they're impossible for a rogue. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, right. But this is the kind of advice I appreciate, because if you're new to the game and you don't know this about, there's this idea that the DM knows everything about all classes and all prestige classes and all level abilities and all of these things and all feats and how everything interchanges and works. And that's just not realistic.
Yep.
So it's kind of nice to see this spelled out a little bit about, the typical druid or ranger makes it easier to deal with encounters with animals and plants. That means if you don't have one of those, you might have a little more difficulty dealing with those.
Yep. And I'm all about knowing what kinds of wrinkles you can include in an encounter to make it more difficult without increasing the number of monsters. Like, I would absolutely buy books and books of that content. And frankly, that's a big part of what Keith Amon has built his writing career on recently. So, I certainly could. So kind of moving along here. We get a whole thing on treasure. It's a bunch of tables. Like it's a mess of tables. And it's a very prescriptive paint by numbers approach to treasure that is going to get, I would go so far as to say, recapitulated in 4th edition.
Yeah, I mean, you've got this expected wealth, right? The wealth comparison table tells you the expected wealth gain, how much is from encounters, and how much treasure per character you should have at whatever level. I mean, this is, very, very prescribed.
Yep.
Very prescribed. Because it's not a, oh, well, here's the general guideline and this is about what you, this is like, no, this is what you have. This is what we expect. And if you don't have this, your characters aren't going to be able to keep up.
Yep.
And if you give too much, they're going to be ahead of the curve.
Right. And, I did have some interesting experiences about that in 3.0. I was in a 3.0 game based on the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, where the GM was very consciously overly aggressive. He made the choice with intent to be very, very aggressive in handing out incredibly sweet magic items, just incredibly boss gear, and it had interesting, surprising outcomes, such as us just stomping the crap out of NPCs who really thought they had one up on us. That was a really good time in terms of teaching me a lot about what 3rd Ed would do and not do. With both with the guy who ran that game as a player and with other players, 3rd Ed for us created a sense of, if you haven't, the player could tell the DM, hey, look, you haven't handed out like the requisite amount of treasure. What's going on? Like, I know I'm falling behind, and like that makes sense in 3rd Ed. But if what you're used to is GMing as a broader, let's say, art, that's a really corrosive path of conversation.
Yeah.
And I
agree with that.
Obviously, I don't mean any slight to my friend. Like, he's one of my best friends. He was, one of the groomsmen in my wedding. It's just like that is kind of an example of why 3rd Ed would be monumentally hard for me to go back to, and I feel like I should explain my biases in looking back at this content, right? So anyway.
So after all of these lists of treasure, then we get a little section on how to bring adventures together. Do you make them episodic? Do you weave plots together, et cetera, et cetera? Here's some advice. It's nice. It's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not bad. It's not mind-blowing. It's not bad.
If you don't have any foundation in GMing, you need to read this. On the other hand, it is dry enough that it is going to take a lot of reading to absorb it. I don't know what you need to do to sort of punch this up and make it grabby. That's hard.
Yeah.
But it's important information and worth absorbing. And again, we're looking at this small section, just bringing adventures together and between adventures and the dungeon. That this is all good edition neutral content. That if this is the way you need to see it for it to like work for you, then here you go. Great. One of the great things about having all these DMGs to go through is that brains work differently. And if you need to hear it one way and not another for it to stick, or if you need to come to it again at a later time in your life, here you go. Like, we're going to teach the same lesson a bunch of different ways, certainly at least 6 different ways, and let's see if we can make it all work and level up your GMing.
Right. And then we get to the section of the book that is the beginning of the piece that shows me that 3rd edition is so different from 1st and 2nd. Not that the pieces before this page didn't show that, but let me give you an example. This section on dungeon terrain. Okay. In previous edition DMGs, this section would just have, a Hewn stone walls, what does that mean? Unworked stone walls, what does that mean? Superior masonry versus regular masonry versus what's a flagstone? What's uneven? What's light rubble? How do you make a smooth stone floor in a dungeon? And it would be a very non-mechanical, descriptive style of here's what you might find in a dungeon. You can describe the flagstones differently. You can describe the walls and ceilings differently. You can, make this a different type of environment. Here's what you get in the 3rd edition DMG. And I probably sound like I'm denigrating this, but I'm not. It's just me saying, wow, how different this is. For example,
this is the moment of prescriptive play.
This is the moment of prescriptive play.
Like, this is exactly what I had in my mind when I said that.
Right. So here's masonry walls, the most common kind of dungeon wall. Masonry walls are usually at least 1 foot thick. Often these ancient walls sport cracks and crevices and sometimes dangerous slimes or small monsters living in these areas waiting for prey. Masonry walls stop all but the loudest noises. Okay, perfect. If it stopped there. And then you get this sentence. It takes a DC 20 climb check to travel along a masonry wall. Okay, you might be thinking, what's the big deal, DM Sam? Who cares, right? Okay, let me give you the next one. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but superior masonry walls, basically the same description. Then it says, superior masonry walls are no more difficult to destroy than regular masonry walls, but they are more difficult to climb. The DC is 25.
I see where it says that. I have such like, how can you... Okay, you cannot follow the sentence, covered walls often bear paintings, carved reliefs, or other decoration with "this is harder to climb."
Right, but
do you know
that's
what a
not
relief is?
Right, but bear with me. The next one, hewn stone walls. Lots of description, right? They're 3 feet thick at least. Anything thinner is going to collapse, and it takes a DC 25 to climb them. Unworked stone walls only takes a DC 15. The wall's 5 feet thick. Then it talks about special walls. Then it gets to floors, and it says flagstone, blah, blah, blah. Hewn stone floors. A DC 10 balance check is required to run or charge across such a floor. Failure means the character can still act, but cannot run or charge in this round. Okay, so here's my point. Almost every single one of these entries, and they're just little 2 or 3 sentence entries, but the third or the last sentence is always a rules tick.
Yep.
Right? It's always the DC of balance and tumble checks is 5 is added to it if you're in dense rubble, and it takes 2 squares of movement to enter the square. Sliding floors. Well, if you have this rule, then you have to apply this thing, and you're going to have to look over here. And ledges have railings. In such a case, you get a +5 circumstance bonus on your balance check to move along it. However, if you're next to a railing, you get a +2 circumstance bonus on your opposed strength check to oppose being bull rushed off. It's all rules. It's all rules. So what I was getting at was this is the epitome of showing me the difference between 1st and 2nd edition information in the DMG, for the most part. Not that they don't have rules bits in there, but when they talk about a description of floors and rubble and traps and sliding doors, almost none of it is, here's your DC, here's the type of check, here's what has to move, here's how this changes the circumstance bonus, here's what that stacks with, here's what it doesn't stack with, here's how armor affects that, here's this thing over here, here's this other one, right? It's all about the rules in this edition. And this is why Brandis was saying in the beginning that while in theory this leads to a consistency in the DM's adjudication of situations, what it really sometimes leads to rules lawyering argument. Because the player says, well, let me flip to my page here. This says that light rubble adds only 2 to the DC and you added 5 and that's why I failed.
Yeah. Yep. That'll happen. Ideally not often, but...
And once again, so, I'm sure I come off sounding very dismissive of it. I'm not dismissive of this. This is a great game for some people. I mean, some people love this. I mean, the section with locks, bars, and seals, it talks about how to, chop doors down and do all that stuff. And then it gives you this list of DCs and what if the DC is 10, it's a door just about anybody can break open. If it's 11 to 15, that door needs a strong person. An average person might need more than one try to do it, right? If it's a DC of 16 to 20, then almost anybody could break it, but it's going to take a lot of time. But if it's 21 to 25, then only a strong or very strong person could ever break it, and definitely not on the first try. I mean, this is great if that's the game you want to play. And a lot of people do, and I'm not knocking that. It's just not my style.
Yep, I feel you. I mean, even if you do enjoy this as part of your style of play, this presentation of the information is punishingly impenetrable. This would be a terrible way to try to digest all of that information. Now, I will say I love the art. I adore the art.
I want to push back on you a little bit with that.
Okay.
Because what I want to tell you is that there are some people, perhaps, that love this DMG the way you and I love first and second edition DMG, and that they pored over these sections and read them over and over again.
Yeah, but Sam, some people juggle geese.
The entry for crypt on page 63, although sometimes constructed like a vault, a crypt can also be a series of individual rooms, each with its own sarcophagus or a long hallway with recesses on either side, shelves to hold coffins or bodies. Wise adventurers expect to encounter undead in a crypt, but are often willing to risk it to look for the treasure that's buried with the dead. Crypts of multiculture, and it goes on again. That's nice to read. That would fascinate the hell out of me. If I was 12 or 14 when I was reading this, I might have fallen in love with it the same way I fell in love with the first edition DMG when I was 10.
That's not unfair. Worth pointing out, the 2 paragraphs the crypt gets are not very rulesy.
Right. Well, that's why I picked that one.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff above it, look at Shrine above it, a couple entries above it. It even mentions, Blibdol Poop.
Sure.
That's the Kuatoa god, by the way.
Yep.
I'm not just babbling.
The Kuatoa are, though.
That's right.
It's literally
but you know what I'm saying, right? So Some of these things are not the rules the way that I'm just trying to be fair in my presentation. I really knocked it for the floor and the walls and the doors, but there's also some nice sections in this chapter.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm trying to be fair with it. Also, the staircase image that's next to that crypt entry is hilarious.
Yeah, the spiral staircase there, the doors on the pages previous, those are really nice sort of grace notes to help the uninitiated visualize this content, or to help solidify the image for someone who, I don't know, has seen the word so many times they've stopped really having the image in their mind.
Right.
Which is an easy place to get to in fantasy literature, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But this just keeps going with dungeon features, just so many miscellaneous features.
Yeah, because then you get to the pillars, and you get to, if it's a slender pillar, it only gives you a +2 bonus to your armor class and a +1 cover bonus for reflex saves. If it's a big one, though, it's like, oh god, okay.
Yeah, I guess size matters. All right.
Size, I guess if the question is answered.
I guess if you have to hold up a ceiling, size matters.
Yes, that's right.
So, as you'd expect from listening to us go through the second edition DMG, here's illumination, here's traps, there's a whole section on traps and how to handle the elements of traps, and then sample traps. I mean, there's a lot of sample traps. The thing that always got me about this is the DMG just accepting that there can't really be traps higher than CR10. Like, they stop introducing traps after CR10 because you have so many things you can do, and your saving throws have gotten so good that they couldn't think of how to challenge you with traps. And I think that one of the great things about the 4th edition DMG is that they do really push back on that with traps continuing all the way into epic tier, and with math to support that, because there's not really a compelling reason that your Whale of the Banshee trap couldn't have its difficulty to find, difficulty to disarm, and difficulty to resist all cranked into the stratospheric numbers of late game 3rd edition, right? They just didn't do that, it may be in part because they're thinking, well, the PCs will just teleport past this anyway, and maybe they will. That's certainly a undervalued consideration in 5th ed traps, and probably also 4th ed, of just, look, we have this whole big death trap room you have to get through. Unfortunately, you can see the way out from here. So, I guess this isn't the threat we thought.
See, my issue with this section is that I really feel like it could be a table. I mean, listen to this entry. Box of brown mold, CR2, mechanical, touch trigger, automatic reset, 5-foot cold aura, 3d6 cold non-lethal, search DC 22, disabled device DC 16, market price 3,000 gold. I'm sorry, that's a table. Why do you have 5 pages of this list of these by CR
Yep.
when you could put it in a table?
Yep, I get you. Well, and the market price really kills me.
Yeah. Right.
What is the use case where you need the market value of this? Or are we going back to my old idea of doing a full cost analysis of how much Halaster Blackcloak spent to build each floor of Undermountain?
Well, here's this wide mouth pit trap, market price 28,200 gold pieces.
Look, this is 3.5. I'm genuinely surprised that there isn't like one table where you buy pit trap and another where you buy the wide mouthed enchantment for it.
Bite your tongue, it might be coming up.
Right? Because, I mean, if you look at the Melf's Acid Arrow Trap as compared to the arrow traps before it, right, the basic arrow trap of CR1, well, that's actually sort of what's happening. It's just not handled in the adjective noun format that magic items carry. Like, you could absolutely get into an adjective noun structure with all these traps, and I've heard worse ideas. I've had worse ideas today.
Yeah. Anyway, so then it goes on to designing a trap, and it gives you costs and different tables, and it's decent. It's a very mechanized, once again, very prescribed. Then it even gives you the craft DC for building a trap. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's actually pretty cool. I will grant that's pretty cool. The transparent the illusion of transparency, so that like anything the NPCs can create, the PCs can create too, because the NPCs are just people, and so are
Right.
you. That's actually really interesting. It does have issues that come out later in play, but it's interesting here for sure. The use cases where you would want to build some of these traps, the game is just not built enough around tower defense, right? Like an extended tower defense module where you need to build a bunch of traps to murder people with, that's an amazing idea. More people should be doing that. BioShock 2 was a really good game, is what I'm telling you. But
would it make an good RPG, though?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because aren't you just rolling for your craft DC and then figuring out how long it takes you?
Oh, well,
and then you pull out the map and you just say where you're putting them? I mean...
Right. That's fine. The point of the trap is that if you can maneuver the NPC into that space, you get a bunch of free attacks. It's an action economy fixer for the rogue.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is...
But no, the crafting system is not the exciting part here.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to say, is the fun there is figuring out where to place them and testing that.
Right.
Not rolling for your trap creation DC.
Frequent listeners to this show know that I have been trying to solve crafting in tabletop games for roughly 10 solid years, and I ain't got it yet, but I'm getting closer. Yes, you're absolutely right. Rolling craft checks is not it. That is not it, Chief. But if you can get around that step of the process, the tower defense model of play is potentially amazing. Anyway, I think we could probably move on to dungeon ecology.
Yeah, we can.
This is essentially dungeon dressing, but with things that are alive or quasi-alive. Your green slimes, your brown molds, your other major destroyers of property value.
And once again, here's another section where I'd probably be in love with this if I was, 14 reading this, because it's awesome.
There's nothing wrong with this at all. It's perfectly good. Philosophy around wandering monsters is one of those big dividing points between GMs and D&D, because frankly we still haven't agreed on what the words even mean, or when you do the rolling for a wandering monster. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but again, so the advice in here, or the guidelines, or whatever you want to call it, the things that it asks you to think about when you're thinking about wandering monsters, it's workable, it's decent, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then it goes to random dungeons and gives you a nice random door table type. There was actually random furniture furnishings tables back before that we didn't mention. So I think that in the end of the DMG 2, remember I said that the thing it's missing is random dungeon creation tables that were in
Right.
the end of the first edition.
Yes.
And so this kind of puts some of that back.
Absolutely it does, yeah. There's very much a sense that you can just have some good lonely fun with percentile dice and go to town, and you're going to wind up with a ton of encounters. You have some interesting times with like the increasing difficulty as you go deeper in the dungeon.
And then it gives a nice little example. It gives you the monastery cellar.
Yeah.
And so it's a nice little example. I mean, it's only 3 rooms, right? I mean, it's not like it gives you an entire adventure in the middle of the book,
right?
But it's trying to show you here's what you could create using those tables and that information.
Right, and use cases are absolutely great for adventures.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of room to argue that they're too loquacious in some of this material. And so, like, just stripping out about half the verbiage would make this content more helpful in actual use at the table. But this did, to some extent, define a style.
I mean, the thing about this is I kind of agree with you, but this is actually trying to give real advice. For example, if you look at the first room, it gives you the shaded box, which is supposed to be, it's a traditional box text that you're supposed to read to the players, which is just, a literal description of the room size and how tall the ceiling is. And then it has this italicized section that tells you exactly how to make this room on a map.
Yeah.
It says to represent this chamber, use the 4x4 square room on the left side of the dungeon map. It's adjacent to the 4x5 square room. You can use the cutouts provided. It's trying to show a new DM how to put together something that was created from a table and make it into the battle map.
Yep.
Which is important because up until now, the 3rd edition is the first edition where it's assumed you're going to be using maps and minis. Not that you couldn't use them before, that they weren't used before. That's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm implying. What I'm saying is 3rd edition, it's expected.
Yep. And it's possible to run Theater of the Mind encounters in 3rd, but you have a tough road to hoe ahead of you. And you are probably going to soften on that as you go, even if it's just some very sketchy stuff on some index cards to help track position, because positioning is such a key part of just your attack math, because the Congo line of death of how sneak attack works.
Yeah. But so anyway, so I do agree with you that some of this stuff is way too wordy. They don't really need all this. But on the other hand, if I was brand new and I didn't know how, and I was really unsure, maybe it would be. I don't know. It's hard for me to judge in that context.
That's super fair. Super fair. And I'm not saying it's a disaster area. That's
no. I do find it interesting that they give that little example and talk about it so much.
Yep. But to go to a point you've raised in other episodes of other shows here on the Tome Show, they're communicating intent.
Mm-hmm.
They're being hyper explicit about intent. And yeah, there's a lot of adventures that could stand to toss in some sidebars on the why. Why does this matter to the designer? What are they trying to get to here? Does this have a point, or should I cut this if I'm running short on time?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's one of my big critiques of most 5e adventures is the intent is often not clearly
yep.
telegraphed to the reader, to the DM, the person who's going to run that adventure. So some of these leave a lot to be desired. And I could make the same critique of 4th edition modules and 3rd edition modules and any module.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
For sure. We've never done nearly enough to explain the story at each beat.
Mm-hmm.
Since you have to be thinking of each encounter as at least one beat and very likely more. And then there's some explanation of how to handle monster statistics. And that's really good. You need that. They're really dense in 3rd ed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when it takes several inches of a column to describe tiny monstrous spiders with 2 hit points each that are a threat to exactly no one because they do 1d3 minus 4 damage. Like, folks.
Do they? Oh god.
Full attack. Plus 5 melee, 1d3 minus 4 plus poison. Bite.
That's gotta be a typo.
No, it doesn't. No, that's intended. It's just that you have minimum 1.
Oh, you have a minimum 1, okay.
I think so.
So you're always just going to do 1. Oh, see, when you started reading that, I was looking actually at the small monstrous spider above it,
Sure,
and I was like, that's not the right, it's 1d4 minus 2. I'm like, what are you reading? And then I went and looked.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Well, and the great thing is they have a reach of 0 feet, so they have to be in your square to attack you.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot. And like they get sort of really caught up in all of the individual traits that apply to this thing. Poison, web, tremor sense, vermin traits. Folks, it is 2 hit points. This is 2 hit points on the hoof. It's got
Wait, Brandis, hold on. I need to stop you right there. They get a +8 competence bonus on hide and move silently checks when they use their webs.
Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, see, and this is where my impression of a lot of 3rd edition stat blocks for monsters being way, way overwrought. This is why.
Oh yeah, they're super over-engineered, but they're enormously over-engineered, and you can imagine needing this in some incredibly small corner cases, but
right.
For the great majority of play, this is wasted text.
But remember what they were going for, though. Consistency.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So you can't make some of the monsters not have that huge stat block, and some do.
No,
you have to do them all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
It's just unfortunate that the 2 of the examples they picked are basically inconsequential creatures.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Designing for brevity and clarity from first principles is a good plan. People should do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, long section on how to read this.
So I want to tell you that I do appreciate this section, this statistics block section, because it's the only place that it actually spells out what SA really means, what SQ really means, what AL means, what SV means, right? Because I say that, and that sounds probably stupid to anybody who played a lot of 3rd edition, but what is the difference between SA and SQ if you don't know? If you've never played 3rd edition before? Right. Those 2 things, what is that?
Yep.
I mean, I know now, don't get me wrong, I don't need you to tell me now, but I did not know this for a long time, and there have been occasions where I've had 3rd edition books, monster manuals or whatever, and I've run 3rd edition 2 or 3 times, and I'd constantly be looking, okay, wait, what's A again? What's SA again? What's SQ? What's the difference between these things, and what is and it's never really actually very well spelled out anywhere except right here. Which says something, but that's,
Yeah. So there's some sections on wilderness adventures, back to how to get lost.
Some terrain descriptions, some hazards like forest fires and whatnot.
And this is, in its own way, also very prescriptive. When you get into the really fine gradations in mountain terrain features.
Right.
Gradual slope, alpine cross-reference against alpine meadow for a 50% something.
Right.
50% chance of something. I don't know what's a 50% chance of.
I think it's how likely it is that a given square has a terrain element in it.
Oh, for God's sake.
That's for the forest terrain.
Sure.
So once again, here they have these very prescriptive things, and some of these tables are not easy to read or easy to understand what they're trying to say. But again, they devolve into this situation. For example, light undergrowth provides concealment and increases the DC of tumble and move silently checks by 2. A steep slope increases the DC of tumble checks by 2.
Right.
You get into all of a sudden more tiny rules minutia.
I mean, this would be an amazing video game because the computer would manage it. You would have, a buff or debuff or whatever based on the things the computer had assigned to the square you're standing in. Great.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, I'm moving fairly quickly through this section.
Yeah. So it talks about all these different types of terrains and what makes them difficult and some things to consider. And then it talks about weather, and it gives you some random weather tables, some effects of wind. It has a bunch of wilderness encounter charts, just like it had dungeon encounter charts. And then we get to urban adventures.
Right. Which is largely handled in the same wise. There are a bunch of tables. There are incredibly extensive tables here for things for your various urban encounters. There is not, in fact, and I'm pleased to say this, a random harlot table.
Yes.
We
Thank
can
goodness.
grow from incredibly retrograde to merely somewhat retrograde. But the table 327 buildings is sort of a domain management table crying in the corner of this urban adventures
Right.
section. Huge castle, 1 million gold pieces. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a decent section. It does have some of that descriptions of walls and gates and guards and soldiers and siege engines and stuff. They do have the rules minutia tucked in, but there's also some descriptive stuff that I would probably enjoy reading if I was experiencing this for the first time.
Yep.
And I do appreciate some of the things that it talks about. For example, it talks about crowds on an urban street, right?
Yeah.
It talks about chasing people on rooftops, chasing people through sewers. It's not a bad section. The lights in the city, what kind of lighting is there? These are things that people need to know if they're going to run an adventure or at least part of an adventure in a town. That's nice to think of. I mean, it's once again, like much of the other advice, it's kind of basic and nice and good, basically mediocre. It's not, most of it's not wow grade stuff, but most of it's not bad either, other than the little rules sentences.
Yeah, it's just it remains very dense and sort of you're going to have to read the whole thing very carefully if you're going to try to use any of it.
And so that actually goes to the fact that this is really a reference document that you use when you're prepping an adventure.
Right.
Right. It's not necessarily something that you would read from cover to cover. It is really a reference document, which is actually something that we've said about both of the other DMGs too. So.
Yep. So next chapter is chapter 4, non-player characters. This is NPC building as demographics.
Right.
We've talked about this a bit in other episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I think comparatively to a lot of Skills and Powers content last year around this time.
Yep. We had that whole demographics table, and we talked about how many, 18th level wizards there were
right.
in the population, given the population density and all that.
And there's very much a sense of that going into this. There's also some advice on how to be a villain. Some pointers for well-played villains. Well, I think it says a lot about this DMG that is not even a whole column of a page, but it's some of the best advice in the whole chapter. It needed to be 3 pages. I don't care. Keep working till you come up with more stuff to say, because a well-played villain is everything.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, what's funny is the points they make are well received, but not well explained. I agree. This could be expanded to 3 pages, this one section.
Really digging into how to implement some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
Is one of the things that always challenges me. Things like take hostages. well, I can't believe you would give me rules for climbing 18 different kinds of wall, but not good rules for,
Right.
I've got the hostage at sword point, what happens next?
Right. Yeah. It gets 2 sentences.
Right?
Well, that's what I was thinking about the use lackeys. It says, don't have a major villain confront the PCs herself unless necessary. Eventually, the PCs will want to take the fight to her, but she should use underlings, cohorts, and summoned creatures to challenge the characters whenever possible. Nevertheless, don't deny the PCs the satisfaction of ultimately having the opportunity to defeat her. Okay, like write me 2 more pages on that, because I could use some information about what kind of lackeys, how tough should they be,
Right.
should they have a power struggle with the boss, like at what point do you let the boss show herself, how do you work clues in so that they know that these are just lackeys and not the main people, like
Right. And I mean, there's a whole tabletop game that, as far as I can prove, was writ to expand this section into its core conceit of play. That game is Knights Black Agents with the Conspiramid.
right, yeah.
Like, if you need to understand how Ladder of Lackeys connects back to the Master Vampire, that is the game for you. And I say that with a deep sense of praise, because that's a useful piece of, how do these NPCs relate to each other? Well, if there's a power struggle between the gun runners in Romania and the art thieves in Paris, that Conspiramid is going to help you work it out. Well, that's pretty good lackey stuff. And I mean, certainly in D&D, one of the ultimate logic problems of using lackeys is that unless you are really clustering the PC's resources that they're going to miss once they encounter the boss, you're doing a good job of feeding them XP.
Right.
And I don't know, just to insert my own real piece of advice for presenting villains, just put everything into what the villain does that is evil. Don't put everything into how do they oppose the PCs. The whole dynamic is just, we oppose each other because we oppose each other if you do that. Focus on why they're evil and why the PCs want them gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, we move on to NPC classes.
Yes.
Just gonna drop that and move on.
Well, so
classes.
there is a table that you skipped, and it is the prices for hireling services.
Yeah.
And these prices,
it's super familiar from the second ed DMG.
Yep, and first ed. These prices are feel really low because it's very generic ones. It's not the enormous tables of here's your sage and what kind of a sage and what do they know and what level are they and how much do they cost per level and what else do you want them to do. And
well, this is a sage that needs some help with his grant writing. I'm just gonna say.
Yes. Right. Exactly. So anyway, moving along.
So sorry, NPC classes. Folks, if you are reading Tasha's College of Everything right now, and you may very well be, this is going to look a lot like the sidekicks.
Yep.
That's not really a coincidence. This is also basically the same as the expert warrior and spellcaster that we talked about from Unearthed Arcana in our recent series. These ideas just keep sort of circling around as the building blocks of D&D.
Well, because there's a consistent problem of how do you have a group of NPCs that are important enough to interact with the PCs on a regular basis, but not really have any stats ready for them.
Sure.
But you also, especially in 3rd edition, don't want to create entire PC-classed characters for that NPC who may or may not become very necessary or whatever.
I feel that I can assure you that most adventure writers did, in fact, create PC-classed characters, but that's fine.
Right, but I'm saying as a DM, you're not going to create a PC-classed NPC for every shop owner, for every guide that might be leading you from one town to the next, for every caravan guard, right? Like, for some of them, sure. But are you doing it for all of them? I mean, I don't know. Maybe in 3rd edition people did. But it seems to me like this is an attempt to make that a little easier.
So I'm just going to spoil something for our listeners. When we get to the Dungeon Master's Guide 2, you're going to see some stuff with how the game imagined implementing this. It's going to get real, folks. And we can't really do it justice in voice here in podcast land, but you need to check this thing out and see just the scale of minutia that we're really talking about.
Right.
All right, I'm good.
I mean, yeah. So the DMG 2 for third edition is gonna be fun to talk about. But anyway, so you get my point, though, right?
Absolutely,
like I feel like the intent of this section is, hey DM, we know that your job is already hard enough. Here's how to make a commoner without having to expend a ton of brain space on creating an actual level 1 PC.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is good. It's a good idea.
No, it is. The NPC tables of stuff are great. They're great. They could maybe answer one or two more questions for you, but they do have space limitations.
Right.
I'll just say that I am pretty sure people were selling, PDFs of, or maybe whole dead tree books of, okay, I have just done stat blocks of NPC wizards from 1 to 20. All right, now clerics, now barbarians, go. And, if you did 3 or 4 variations at every level, that's a phenomenal tool, if an extraordinarily annoying one to create in third ed.
Right. But here it is in this DMG, though.
Well, sure, I'm talking about adding the feats.
Yeah. Well, that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, so that's what the next several pages is literally NPC cleric, here's a table with 1st through 20th level. NPC fighter, here's a table with 1st through 20th level. As you said, it just gives you the number of skill points and feats that person would have. It doesn't choose them for you. So it doesn't do all the work.
Yep.
But it does quite a bit of it, especially if you're just on the fly wanting some basic stats.
Yep. And then you get adjustments by race or kind.
Right.
Which is a ton of CR, ability score, skill, and so on adjustments for all kinds of different humanoids, right? And we're really kind of distinguishing NPC from monster.
Right, for sure. Yes. Yeah. Although some of these would possibly fall into the monster category, but that's okay.
You are so judgy about were-rats, Sam.
I am, and doppelgangers, and yes, I am.
You can be judgy about doppelgangers once you can't literally play one in spoilers.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And then it gives this nice 100 traits for you to roll on, and this is very reminiscent of that table that we talked about in the second edition DMG with it split it into 5. There's 20 groups, and then each of them has 5, and so there's 5 different ways to be charming. There's 5 different ways to be genuine. There's 5 different ways to be kind-hearted. There's 5, that whole table that we talked about. This is a much simpler D100 table. It's a 100-part table that, gives you traits like this person's very tall, or this person slurs their words, or this person is observant, or this person has a tattoo, It's fine. It's,
Yep.
I love this. It's number 100 is no sense of humor. See number 26.
Yeah, that's rude.
Yeah, isn't
that's rude, folks? There is no number 26 in this table.
Yes, they are. They are testing to see if you have a sense of humor. And then we get to campaigns, chapter 5.
Yep. This is nice and advicey.
Yep.
I do like that we get characters in the world around them, class roles, and society. I talked about how much I like this in the second ed DMG, and I will stand by it that this is good content here as well. The section of the sorcerer does sort of hammer home the why even are sorcerers for me. I appreciate that.
Yeah. The very first sentence.
To the general populace, sorcerers are indistinguishable from wizards. Cool, thanks.
Yep, thanks, we're done. Okay, we don't need the other 2 paragraphs.
Yep. just move on to the next class, because we decided to store all the information in the next one. Good. Anyway, this is perfectly good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And they're going to talk also about campaign models, war and other calamities. That's good stuff. Like a war epic is a super, super classic campaign model that is not going away. It's literally the first one.
Right.
So it's probably safe.
Yeah.
And then
Campaign issues.
yeah, maybe surprisingly to me, they jump straight to campaign issues, which to some extent is recapitulating earlier content from the book.
Yeah, to some extent, but I do think that they try to hedge it toward, okay, now this is kind of the second time you're hearing this sort of thing, so think about this in terms of your entire campaign. It's fine.
Yep.
It has a whole section on changing alignment, which
I do want to note that they have a rogue named Garrett, and I think that's great. I think that means someone was playing Thief the Dark Project, which everyone should do once, even though I haven't. So yeah, like the 2 paragraphs they spend on character power levels, this needs to be a chapter. Like they're trying to say in these 2 paragraphs what the second edition book high level campaigns had to say, minus all the epic level content, right?
Right.
Which will get its own book in 3rd ed.
Yeah, you can tell what they are concerned about in this book based on what they give space to.
Yeah, and they're not concerned about character power levels. It's just they are not trying to solve the problem for you here. They're just saying, hey, this could be a thing. This might be a difficulty. How are you going to solve that? Excuse me?
Yeah.
But going into world building, well, good world building advice. People have written many fine books about it, and they will write many more, and it will never go out of style.
Yeah, I think that's...
People have been enjoying world building since at least the Brontes, so I think it's safe as an art.
I think so too. And some of this stuff is really good.
Yeah. I'm not digging into it in a lot of detail right now, but ultimately, like, this is fine.
I mean, we kind of touched on this when we talked about economies, because this is talking about how big is a town, who's in it,
how much money do they have to spend,
right?
Racial mix of communities. I actually particularly like that they have 3 different types of communities, right? The isolated community that is mostly one race with a tiny smattering of others, the mixed and the integrated. It's good to remember to do that. That was a topic that came up a couple of times in working on Seas of Adari, and especially in going to Under the Seas of Adari, because in writing fantasy, it's so easy to fall back on, well, this is the land of the insert race name here, and most of the cities are, predominated by that race. But that's not the Vidari aesthetic, right? It's a much more, everyone is everywhere, everyone has had to rely on each other to survive, and so all the communities should be much more integrated, and we should be telling that story with just everything that we do. And I'm saying this in this podcast to encourage other GMs to do the same. Like, use all of these things to tell the story that you mean to tell. Because just the kind of person who can be on the street in a city and not draw notice is an enormous amount of characterization.
Right.
The whole weirdness of the city of Sigil hangs on that right there. Like, an archangel and a barbed devil can walk down the street, presuming they have open carry laws, drinking a beer, and it's not even strange.
That would be the one thing that is not.
Right, no open carry. Well, I mean, the Lady of Pain does not approve of you committing a party foul in her street. All right, that's what I know.
But no, it's true. And part of the thing with large urban areas is you can be anonymous.
Yep.
Well, if you're the only tiefling in a 99% human urban setting, you're not anonymous.
Right.
You stick out like a sore thumb.
The question is, does every encounter become about how you're different?
Right.
And
right.
It's a huge question in world building and in what things can be player races.
Right.
Anyway, we then get into things like taxes. It's 2 paragraphs, not 2 pages.
Right.
Political systems. Again, much boiled down from what I think you'd find in some earlier DMGs, where they would just be going for peak SAT score.
Right.
What is a gerontocracy? What is
Yeah.
a kleptocracy? And if you don't know those words, folks, look around.
Oh, ouch. Yes. So let's move along with that one. That was great. I love it.
Thanks. I was proud of that.
Yeah. And and to be fair, while it was obvious, often felt like an exercise in improving your SAT vocabulary, also it was a way to use terminology that might not be known by everyone, and that increases the sort of fantastical fantasy nature of the world, of the setting.
Sure. Tossing out words that the audience has to think for a minute to etymologize in their brains.
Right.
That is some deep Jack Vance action right there.
Right.
And of course Gary was into it.
Sure, of course. And so the question is, is it necessary? Do you need it? Well, it depends on your preferences, I think. But is it necessary for it to be in this book? I don't think so. I think they did a good enough job of providing enough of a sort of generalized main types of political systems that it's fine.
And I think that the sort of DMG as initiatory experience is kind of dead in the water here. They've gone full textbook, in my view.
Right.
They've tried to rationalize everything, and by making it rational, well, it isn't founded in mystery and intuition nearly as much, for better or for worse.
Right, for better or for worse. And also because of that idea also leaks into the idea of, well, none of it's optional. It's all prescribed. And it's all fair game and part of the game.
Yep.
So then it talks about social classes and magic. It has a discussion on magic items and superstitions. Then it talks about religion, which follows well along that, I guess.
Which it hangs on their default religion choices for 3rd edition. Very Greyhawk.
So here's my one problem with this section.
Yeah, hit me.
Okay. No force affects society more strongly than religion. You need to match the religions in your world with the societies you present. Okay, fine. That fair point. Got it. Then basically that's all it says. And then it says, okay, the pantheon, here's your pantheon. Here's a sample pantheon. It has no real discussion about the fact that a pantheistic society is intrinsically different from a monotheistic society.
Sure, yeah.
And yet here I'm presenting to you a pantheon. By definition, that means that the people, the majority of people, take all of these to be gods.
Yep.
And therefore it's a pantheon, which means they are all polytheistic. Right.
And D&D has been rightly accused for roughly 4.5 decades of presenting a large number of parallel monotheisms.
Sure. Yes, exactly.
Is just completely bananas.
Right.
And makes no sense with even what the text itself says. It's just that the actual writing to transform that into something that the GMs will know how to use in describing religious systems that many of those GMs don't ascribe to. That hasn't been done. It needs to be done. But
yeah, but the thing is though,
for the consumption of most people, it hasn't been done.
Right, but I feel like it's so without requiring 20 pages, you could actually just add one more paragraph to this section explaining that pantheism is very different from monotheism, and here's an example of how a commoner might respond to a bad harvest, right? And then later on that year, how they might respond to the next planting season or the new year. And in each of those cases, they might be, asking for supplication from a different deity and explaining that particular commoner, it's not odd for them to understand that all three of those deities are powerful entities in the universe.
Yep.
Full stop. That's it. That's all they need is one or two examples. Here's a commoner. Here's how a squire or a knight might see that, right? Somebody who is pious in particular to one deity, but understands that all the others are also in existence, and a commoner who, doesn't even have a household god or a family god that they particularly worship. But, it's not that hard. They could do it in one paragraph.
Yep.
And by the way, this isn't a knock on third edition. This is a problem that has been had for, a long time. So anyway.
Yeah, it is just as present in first ed content as it is in fifth.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
Just straight up. So the next section is building a different world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the right person to explain to you how problematic the Asian weapons table is here. So we're gonna just sort of put the problematic stamp on that and skate. The other thing here is Renaissance weapons. So sure, there's damage values for Renaissance weapons in case you have a pistol or a musket. Great, fine.
Yeah, there's a little tidbit on technology and whatnot. So whatever.
And then
okay.
modern era weapons in case you find some sort of crashed spaceship.
Mm-hmm. Right. Then it moves on to talking about other planes.
Yep, adventuring in other planes, and we get magic traits and elemental energy traits, and it can be a lot to manage, especially if you're also trying to manage the physical terrain as described in the previous things on Dungeons and Wilderness, and how that should apply in those planes, because this is sort of terrain-ish, but also sort of not, and you're just stacking up a lot of different 1 to 2 paragraphs of conditions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's not an error. It's just the logical conclusion of what the situation creates.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
We get plane descriptions. Ethereal plane, plane of shadow. Plane of shadow is very much the proto Shadowfell.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep.
And that's super interesting. I really like what's here. I like the Dark City. Really good movie. Just a really fun, weird, creepy movie. The art on the facing page of the Great Wheel Cosmology is the heckin' best.
Yeah.
I really like what's here. It is not super easy to decipher because they got so artsy with it, but it is absolutely the magic item I want to have a fabricator build and let me hand to my PCs.
Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful piece of art. It definitely is.
So we also have the astral, then the elemental plane of air, earth, fire, water, heart. No, sorry, not heart.
Negative energy, positive energy, Isgard. Yeah, so it kind of goes through all these. And here's the thing is, all of these, it gives a...
Lord, Sam, do you know I may have literally never read this chapter of this
Really?
book? I think there's a pretty good chance I never read this. I just completely skipped it every single time. I'm not sure. Like, I saw the art of the Great Wheel Cosmology dozens of times. Just the pages here are so dense and so not what I was ever looking for at that given moment.
Right.
I may have never read this.
Well, see, that's what I was going to say is it gives it gives a several paragraph write-up on each of these sort of planes. I think it's each of them, at least most of them. I'm sure they're all in here. And some of them get very mechanistic and some of them are not mechanistic. In other words, some of them go into you need this DC, and if you want to do this kind of activity and blah, blah, blah. Some of them have, they tell you how to generate a random encounter for these. You would, for example, in the Blessed Fields of Elysium, your random encounters would alternate between heavenly encounters and beatific encounters, whereas in the Beast lens, you're only using the beatific encounters. Okay.
Sure.
This is a kind of a nice intro. These things are a nice intro. And by the way, all those tables are there. So the Heavenly Encounters table's there and all that stuff. But it's a nice intro for people who don't know anything about the planes. It's fine.
Yep. I mean, I'm disappointed that they don't explain anything about who's in charge of the Clockwork Nirvana of Mechanus. I think it's important because it's one of my favorite running jokes.
Why is that?
Because Primus sucks.
Oh, that's right. I forgot Primus sucks. Yes.
Man, I appreciate you. Just help me build up that setup. That's very good, Sam.
I think I was the only one that got that joke the last time you said it too.
Well, I have some friends who listen to the podcast who really appreciate that.
Yeah. In any case, so then it talks about creating a cosmology and planar traits.
Oh, there's one plane missing that I do want to note for any fan of 4E or 5E.
Okay.
It's the Feywild.
The Feywild, yes.
There's not a plane of Feyre or the Feywild or whatever like described here. You can kind of imagine that maybe the Wilderness of the Beastlands is that, or Peaceable Kingdoms of Arcadia might be that, but that's not a given, right?
Or the Olympian Glades of Arborea.
Maybe, right?
Yeah.
But those don't like really have the same kind of space for the Gloaming Court or Unseelie that is so integral to the Feywild. So it's a major piece of how the conception of the cosmos in D&D just really suddenly turned. And now Fae and everything. It's like there are Fae subclasses of one kind or another for all kinds of different things, and I think it's great.
I mean, the Fae existed. It's just that it wasn't such a focus.
Right.
And so they didn't need their own need. It's probably a weird way to say that, but you know what I'm saying? Because they weren't a focus, it was sort of a non-necessary element to the planar discussion.
Right. And, we sort of don't talk a lot about how I think some of the way you'd want to approach that here is to say that, well, the Unseelie or Gloaming Court is the Drow, and then the Seelie Court is the Olympian Glades of Arborea. Maybe. That, right? I don't know. There are ways you could try to make it fit, but...
Yeah, it could be. I mean... So the question there is, did they create the Feywild so that because they had a conception and they didn't want to just meld those planar locations together? Or did they really do something different when they did the Feywild?
I mean, the deep core of the Feywild, the reason it exists is to be a place you're actually going to go. And not a place that you sort of have in the book but never go.
Right.
Like, the whole point of the planar realignment and overhaul in 4E is to make the planes a place you'll go.
Right.
And so there isn't a lot of great adventuring to do in Arborea. Everything's fine there. That's the point.
Right.
It's heaven. And you're already going to the Underdark. Well, you're still going to the Underdark. That's never changing. It's just that the Drow are going to be... if the Drow ever were sort of Unseelie, we're just completely getting rid of that. And it's a little weird because they should sort of be the Decalfar of Norse mythology, maybe, but that works less and less. It doesn't work in the very initial conception of Drow, and it works less as you go on. Anyway, we don't have to keep going down that line.
Yeah, I think because I love the Feywild.
Same.
Just as an adventuring location, I love the idea of it, even without really dealing with the courts.
Sure.
Just the idea of the magic having outpaced effects, right?
Yep.
And outlandish, sort of Midsummer Night's Dream style characters in there is fantastical. And it brings that sort of fairy tale element back into the game in a way that Arborea, for example, doesn't, right?
Yep.
So I think that's maybe where we'll leave it. So then we get to characters.
Oh man, I do not feel much need to dig into this.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the overview. You get some ability score discussion, how to do point buy, for example. You get some discussion with race and class combinations. You get some monsters as races discussion. You get some how to modify character classes. This is all very, and then you get some prestige classes and some advice on how to create new classes. Look at prestige classes that are perhaps optional because of the way that perhaps you don't want them in your game. It could be a chapter that's just appended onto the PHB.
Yep.
Yep. And
if the prestige classes aren't player facing, how are they going to qualify?
Right. Well, but that's why I say perhaps optional, because perhaps you don't want to allow a thaumaturgist or shadow dancer or something. Like I don't know.
Good heavens, how could someone ever not want to allow a Mystic Theurge?
I'm just saying, right? Like
you'll note that was not phrased as a question.
No, I know. And then there's some learning new skills, learning new spells, downtime, fixed hit points, creating PCs above first level. I mean, this is all very typical. And then there's a bunch of information on familiars with their stat blocks. And this literally is just hey, here's some stuff to think about in terms of PC classes and blah. Yep. Oh, and then let's talk about unusual mounts. And animal companions.
And then epic characters as sort of the stopgap until they can release Epic Level Handbook.
Right. And that's the chapter. I mean, we're sort of joking about giving it short shrift, but there's really not a lot to say about it unless we were to really specifically talk about any, specific prestige class or something in there. And
we could do an episode on the idea of prestige classes, and that's worth discussing, but
sure.
That's way out of scope for this book.
Right. Yeah. And then we get to chapter 7, magic items.
Yep. And this is going to have a lot of the material around repairing and improving magic items. And then all of that sort of adjective noun magic item structure I was talking about for every kind of weapon, every kind of shield, every kind of armor is going to be built on that. Aside from a very small number of this thing is a complete item in itself because it is an item with a name or whatever. And so it's not adjective noun. Like the Holy Avenger is a whole thing in itself, right? It is not a modifier placed on an existing object. You just don't do that. The 9 Life Stealer is the same way. On the other hand, you've got just a flaming longsword or a
Sylvan scimitar.
Sure.
Adamantine shield. Yep. Adamantine battle axe.
Glamored armor, light fortification armor, and so on and so on
and
so on. I mean, there are books and books and books of this content that got published.
And I mean, and this whole chapter is lists and descriptions of a ton of magic items.
And in fairness, D&D does very much hang on there being cool stuff to find.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm
very important.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, again, like the last chapter, there's not really a lot of reasons for us to go over all of this. It's a lot of tables, a few pictures, and a lot of stats.
Yep. This is very much about what came to be called the Christmas tree effect. There needs to be an ornament on every little branch of that tree, or you have done it wrong. And that should be timely for, this Christmas.
Right.
If your family does Christmas trees, then you do third ed magic items.
Yes, there you go. A magic item on every branch.
Yep.
That sounds good. Let's do it.
That sounds like a campaign promise right there.
Yeah, no kidding. And then it gets to intelligent items, and it tells you, how to determine alignment, how to determine its powers, how to determine its ego. That's sort of typical item. Then it has a cursed item section, some drawbacks, specific curses, specific cursed items, describes those. Then it talks about artifacts. This is a traditional magic item chapter, so I'm not saying anything probably that anybody is concerned about or surprised until we get to the end where it says creating magic items.
Yep.
And is there anything you want to say about that? I mean, there's the difference between masterwork and other materials, and then magic item creation costs and estimating gold piece values.
This is very much exactly the deal that I'm always talking about with magic items as progress bar. It's really, really evident here. and you're getting to start from the foundation rather than, well, I found this +1 sword and I want to tack more stuff onto it. Well,
Mhm.
no, you start with a masterwork sword and you tack on whatever you want to tack on. And there's a huge number of ways you can modify stuff here, and it just gets more and more and more as the books go on.
Right.
And then the same happens with wands. You're getting 50 charges of that spell, or some portion of 50 charges of that spell in that wand. And so that's where the Wand of Cure Light Wounds, that is your out of combat healing battery, comes from. And then there's a whole thing on body slot affinities and what you should have to pay if you want a given effect outside of its normal body slot, which is an incredibly potent power gaming approach, because the cloak slot is such a useful, important thing. If you're a sorcerer or bard, you have to have a cloak of charisma there, and so you won't be getting cloak of resistance. Well, that's a problem. Could you maybe find a way to get charisma somewhere else?
Right.
Well, not by this. But or at least not without paying a lot of extra. But I mean, for my money, this is very much trading. There's a lot of different things to find, with none of it feels special at all. It's really hard to get to that feeling of, wow, I found something really cool and special, because this is in the DMG, but it feels player facing because you can make all this stuff. So it's something you have to surf through to make your thing. If you're playing in a game where somehow the GM is comfortable doing all of the bookkeeping and keeping it all mysterious from you, then that's really cool. But it wasn't how any of us were playing in those 3.0 and 3.5 campaigns. In no small part because several of us were running campaigns, and so there couldn't be just one person reading the DMG.
Yeah. And I mean, the system is meant to work if the player knows how it works.
Right.
I mean, it's not really meant to be hidden. I mean, okay, so I suppose you could interpret it as DM information, but honestly, to me, it feels like the intent is these are things that the high enough level PC that's going to create this stuff, they're going to know this information.
I agree with that.
So, anything else you want to say about that chapter?
No, I think we're doing just fine to.
Yeah, I mean, we've covered it elsewhere, really, too. So.
Yep.
And then we get to the next chapter, which I think is misnamed. This chapter is called Glossary.
It should be called Recap.
And it literally is a chapter. It's not the glossary at the back of the book. It is Chapter 8, Glossary. I think it should just be named Miscellaneous or...
I mean, it's kind of a recap of major rules concepts that are going to come up, especially around monster abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they had called this monster abilities, they would be telling a lot more of the truth, to be frank.
Right, but that's not all that's in the chapter, because it also talks about conditions and vision and...
Right.
But yes, the whole first, several pages is, here are some abilities that a creature might have, and here are some things to think about what it means, and here's how to adjudicate that.
Yeah. And they need to store as much of that as possible here for nominally easy lookup, because it's going to be a lot.
Right. And then there's the condition summary. Then there is an environment section, but it's really just about acid effects, darkness, cold water, heat danger, falling. It's basically environmental effects that have a mechanical resolution that you should know and be able to look up.
Right. And one of the things about this that sort of gets back to our running commentary on highly defined and prescriptive text is how many of these things are lengthy bullet point lists.
Right.
Anti-magic and blind sight and blind sense really spring to mind here, as do charm and compulsion. Compare the almost a full column of text for charm and compulsion with the Charmed condition in 5e.
Right.
They're really different approaches on how much needs to be said to get the thing across.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have all the poisons sort of kitted out here with type, initial damage, secondary damage, and price. There's nothing wrong with that. That's quite nice. They're certainly going to murder you because ability score damage is that is a fast path to a early grave.
Yeah. Yep.
Black Lotus extract, you say 3d6 con followed by 3d6 con. Good luck, bro. You're hosed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but right, the book ends with some templates and some little bits of dungeon dressing that I can color photocopy and cut out to use to decorate my dungeon maps, and that's not nothing. That's a cool thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it was necessary at the time because, again, it's the first edition that requires or expects the use of maps and minis. And so why wouldn't you want cool, visuals for the table?
I mean, everyone wasn't using their old Hero Quest box set? You're losing me here.
I mean, maybe, but if you were a new DM, maybe you didn't have one of those.
But it was a beloved board game from my childhood, Sam. Surely, along with a car in every garage and a chicken in every stock pot, there was a Hero Quest set mailed to every kid on or about their 10th birthday, right?
I doubt it, and don't call me Shirley.
That's barbaric. No one can live under these conditions.
And then there's an index, okay? And then the thing I love about the index is there's actually a list of sidebars in the index.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And it's enormous. I love it.
So my favorite thing about the very end of the book, I do have a favorite thing about the end here, is that I still have my feedback survey card. Tell us what you think about the Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide 3.5.
Wow.
And yeah, much like when I opened up my Everway box set, I really want to fill this out and send it in just to confuse someone. At least this is a game they remember they own, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my red box still has its sign up for the RPGA.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah. Come see
good.
us at Gen Con 10 or whatever it was. Yeah. Well, so that rounds out the book. That was
it was a whirlwind tour.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind tour. So hopefully we have highlighted the massive sea change in attitude in this DMG compared to the two previous DMGs that we looked at. Now, granted, it might seem to you, dear listener, that we spent so much time on the first and second edition DMG, and we looked at minutia, and we sort of lovingly caressed those books as we went through and talked about all the stuff we love about them and only a few of the things that we dislike. But the reason that we have sort of rushed through third edition DMG 1 and have not really spent, probably seems like we haven't spent as much time on it as we did on the other two, is that we also want to do the 3.5 DMG 2.
Yes.
So that is going to be a deeper dive, possibly, or feel like a deeper dive than what this one was. But hopefully this was satisfactory.
I certainly hope you've all enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I certainly actually enjoyed it. I feel like, or I often feel like when I talk about third edition that I'm, that I come off as dismissive or that I dislike the system or whatever. And I don't mean to be dismissive. There are things that I can find that I like about it. But yeah, it's probably my least favorite edition. That doesn't mean it's a bad game or that it's designed poorly or that they did a horrible job or that their writing sucks. That's not what I mean at all. It just means it's not my preference.
Yep.
But it's nicely done.
Yep. Well, I think we're going to need to call it there for tonight's episode.